Most times as parents, we are not proactive. We only become reactive.
When the issue is already at hand.
As parents, our children are scared to discuss with us. Some children still see their fathers like masquerades. Nothing should be said. And worst again, as parents, we have this issue of segregating our children on sex lines. The girls can communicate with the father and the mother. The boy is my boy. Forgetting that girl child emotionally is closer to the father than the male child. So you see how the whole population is contributing to these challenges. It now goes back to the religious home. They are the worst culprit. Some of them are doing very well now. Because I challenge the kind of counseling that happens in most of the churches. Okay, you want to get married, you're going there to counsel. It's not counseling. What they do there is advice. The scripture says that. I have been a counselor for over a decade. And one principle of counseling is you empower your client to make an informed decision. But what happens in the church is you disempower your client to accept your uninformed decision. Because what they tell them is the scripture says, for God's sake, when the Bible was written, HIV was not there.
That's very interesting.
But if you make good difference, the Bible tells us that my people die for lack of knowledge. Where the pastors and other religious leaders have not sought knowledge, have not acquired knowledge, you cannot give to somebody what you don't have. So as parents, as leaders, as opinion leaders, as policy makers, as religious leaders, a lot of us are deficient, and we are doing the community, we are doing the populace great damage. We have to rethink, even as media practitioners too.
That's a very interesting point you put up there, because like a lot of people are still, I mean, it's not necessarily a new disease anymore, or a new ailment, but
for over 3 decades.
It's been 3 decades now, so we should get to a point where it can be talked about. And speaking of talking about it and knowledge and all of that, you're talking about discussing sex, or for example, with your parents or whoever. I know there's been a big debate about having sex education in schools, and should we still be talking about it? Shouldn't we talk about it already? If you know what I mean.
We're talking about improving the content.
Exactly.
Yes, we should be talking about improving the content, but in a situation where we've not done well, you know, even concerning the initial stage, we still need to make people realize how important it is to discuss it. Like it was talking about some churches giving out information or giving advice on what they did not know about. Well, I'm of the opinion that many churches, even it's not the parish pastor that will do this. They have people that specializes on this area that they will refer to, they will, tell you to go and meet for counseling on all these things, and some of them are doing wonderful job. But the thing is, this emotional something that some of us don't want to listen to the truth, and it still goes down to the fact that nobody is going to do some things for you.
Yeah.
It's a personal responsibility. They will be there to help you, to guide you, but implementing it is your decision. It's something that you need to do. So as churches are trying to do their own, they might not be able to do it 100%. The media also, they are trying to do it. We all have a stake, including the person, including the parent. You know, there's a case of this girl, she went to spend holiday somewhere and she was raped. You understand? And she told me this happened, and I was like, okay, we need to tell your mother, because in the Nigerian constitution, there is no facility for you as a teenager. You're either a child or an adult. You understand? Though that is very pathetic. I mean, I cannot say this teenager is being abused. I want to, advocate. I want to stand in for her. This person is either a child or an adult. As a teenager, you don't have a place. Therefore, we need an adult, you understand, that will come on board with us so that we can really fight this in our behalf. And when you get to the mother, what will she say? I don't want anybody to know. I want to talk to parents. I don't understand what will make you place your ego before the life of your children. I'm a mother, and I always wonder what is happening to us as parents. You did not discuss this with this person. Somehow this person had made a mistake. We now want to come on and let us fight this thing together, and you are saying you don't want this person to hear, and daddy is saying it is mother's carelessness, and also. So we should know as parents that we are the first stakeholders in this thing. And also about this policy implementation. We have a lot of policies in Nigeria that we are not implementing. And I don't know why we don't want to implement something that is very critical to our existence, and those are the things that we need to be looking into.
Yeah. I want to go quickly now into drugs and availability and all of that. Are we on the right path in Nigeria? Have we scratched the surface? Do people even have access to these things?
Fortunately, we have access to funds, and as at now, the United Nations, World Health Organization, most of the donor organizations wants to stop funding for Africa, especially Nigeria, because the reports they are getting is not getting to the grassroots. So when you are talking of, is the drug available? Yes, to an extent. Is the drug accessible? No. Now that becomes a big challenge, because if the drug is available and it's not getting to the set of people that needs it, then it's not available. It's not just that it's not accessible, it's not available. Now, the beauty about it is that advocacy is teaching us to say a lot of things. Just like she said, there are so many policies and there are so many monitoring organizations who claim, in quotes, that those drugs are actually available and accessible. And now, that brings us back to who is in charge? Who should be in charge? Should the non-governmental organization, registered or unregistered, be in charge of this distribution? There are actually some that have been created to do a fantastic job. There are some who can't do anything. Now, I have seen a lot of instances where drug accessibility has been a challenge, has been a very big challenge. I can remember 2 years ago, the only set of places you could get drugs in Lagos were very minimal. But today, there's still a minimal point where you can get drugs. And now, if I am to advise whoever is in charge, I would advise for a multi-stakeholder bottom-up thing, whereby we sit at a round table and discuss rather than trying to look at policy. We have all the best policy in the world. We call it best practice. We have all the best practice policy in the world to ensure that HIV goes to zero. But unfortunately, we are not practicing any. And that is because we are disenfranchising the necessary non-governmental advocacy organization who should be involved, who should be in charge. For example, Mr. Ibrahim's organization, I know of, can actually take up this distribution and dissemination of information on its own without being monitored, because already they have an internal monitoring strategy. But if it is the government or whichever other agency they are giving, now the beauty is, the irony is, where do we get the monitoring from? Who monitors who? How is it disseminated? I think Mr. Ibrahim also had something to that.
Yeah.
Just quickly, so that
okay. You asked about the drugs and right now. Previously, for you to start drug living with HIV, the threshold, you have CD4 count of about 200. It went up to 350. As at when it was 350, Nigeria had about 1.5 million people who needed to take drugs. Only slightly less than 500,000, about 30%, were actually accessing drugs. Right now, the threshold has been increased to 500 CD4 count, which makes the cohort of people who need drugs is going to be increased. The biggest challenge is this. You have a disease burden that is taking this much of your population. And right now, the response is driven by donor fund. About 85% of the funds that goes to treatment is donor driven. So where is the government sitting? We are not talking about ownership, we are not talking about sustainability. And the unfortunate thing that is happening among our policymakers, this is supposed to be a collaborative effort from government, from private sector, and the civil society. One key responsibility of the civil society is monitoring, accountability. But at the government level, some of them will look at the civil society as their enemy. So there is no inclusiveness in the whole thing.
Thank you.
And it's a challenge. And that is why the present presidential comprehensive plan is a welcome thing, where they need to donate, bring a pool, get every state, stakeholders, every state involved, and everybody. But where the government will get it right is getting this transparent and with deep sincerity, then bringing in the private sector, because it hurts for people to plow in money to something and the money disappears the way the pension fund disappears.
Well, thank you very much, guys, for joining us. Of course, we can't talk about this in just one show, but it's been enlightening so far, and hopefully we talk about this more than waiting till December 1, 2014 again.
Yes.
Go back to your court.
That's something that the media
you wait for 1st of December to talk about
Very true, very true.
December.
But thank you very much for joining us, and it's been very interesting.